Russia continues its attempts to seize other countries. However, while its entire horde is bleeding out in Ukraine, the Kremlin is resorting to an old, proven tactic activating its loyalists in other countries.
They shouldn't have messed with Russia. She doesn't do anything bad to anyone. As for the war, well, wars have existed since dawn of time.
Amid the American elections, the election of Moldova's president went almost unnoticed. But just as much was at stake there. Against the pro-European president Maya Sandu, Moscow put forward Moldova's own version of Yanukovych.
The candidate from the pro-Russian Socialist Party and former Prosecutor General Alexander Stoyanoglu.
Fedorich, you know who Fedorovich is?
Stop!
They literally planned to seize Moldova through the elections, so they spared no expense on the local Z-patriots. A year before the elections in the neighboring republic, a protest apocalypse began.
Protesters are calling for the pro-Western President Maya Sandu to resign. They are firmly convinced that Russia should be the country's #1 partner.
Stand up now! Oh, hey! I came because I had to.
They scraped together riffraff from all over the area for the pro-Russian rallies. The goal was to create the impression that Moldovans fear LGBT people more than Russian aggression.
When they show all these different kinds of LGBT parties just walking around, that's simply unacceptable to us.
Traditionally, the paid vatniks didn't shoot at all. What's going on? They were just working off their bowl of cabbage soup.
Why? I heard of some demands about tariffs.
Yes.
What kind?
How did I know?
Before the elections, the Soviet stench got even stronger. Fans of cheap sausage and the blue light TV show became as active as staphylococcus in unsanitary conditions.
Do they want to change our entire Moldovan constitution or something? A referendum to make it like in Europe, so that we have European laws? We'll be working from dawn till dusk and won't even have a chance to catch our breath. I want to live the way my parents did during Soviet times.
It's hard to understand where Putin supporters and fans of the Russian world come from in Moldova country, part of which has been occupied by Russia for 30 years. In a country that Moscow openly plans to seize.
The Kremlin's Ribbentrop Sergei Lavrov claims that Moldova is turning into a second Ukraine. This means that the Kremlin's chauvinistic plans are by no means limited to Ukraine. In Moscow, they have not abandoned their plans and desires to destroy the statehood of all former Soviet republics and annex them to Russia.
If the Ukrainians don't stop him, he will come, especially since people here are already waiting for him with flowers.
True vatniks have neither a real nationality nor any family ties. A true vatnik has only one dream to see with his very own eyes, how the Russian army completely razes his home to the ground. And he dances joyfully on the ashes because now NATO knows its place, or because
of Vladilov!
Better the customs union than the European Union.
Why?
Because over there, poverty is even worse than here.
But how can there be more poverty there if their average salary is higher than ours?
Because of ironing.
Fortunately, in Moldova, there turned out to be far more reasonable people who think about their future rather than living in a moldy past. Sandu won the election despite the influx of planted agents from the occupied Transnistria and tourists from Russia, who, of course, rushed to vote all the way from Kamchatka purely out of the goodness of their hearts.
I actually came from Moscow to vote here.
How did you get here?
On the avian by airplane?
There are rumors that supposedly planes are being arranged. People are flying for free and...
Yes, no.
So you paid your own way to fly here just to vote?
Yes. So it would be like in my childhood, the way we used to live. So they could have the same.
The Kremlin was flying in the right kind of voters to Moldova by the plane load, Aeroflot, official sponsor of the pro-Russian opposition.
On the eve of the elections, the Infokrimno news agency, citing certain sources in the Customs Service and Border Police, reported that more than 150 Moldovans living in the Russian Federation were allegedly brought to Moldova in an organized manner to vote in the second round of the elections. They were transported for free by plane from Moscow to Istanbul, and from there they continued their journey by bus. In Turkey, the passengers were met by 3 buses with Moldovan license plates, which then headed to Bulgaria. Later, the citizens were transferred to another 3 buses belonging to a Bulgarian company, on which they traveled to the customs checkpoint.
I'm sure that many of these people, after traveling around Europe, came and voted for Sandu. As is well known, you can't let Vatniks out from behind barbed wire. They might experience culture shock and a rejection of their so-called sacred greatness.
If this is what Russia looks like for you, and in Russia absolutely no one at all took it, then what exactly is going on over there? Someone is taking it!
Moldova has preserved its independence and protected its future. But we shouldn't let our guard down. Moscow has no intention of disconnecting the Vatniks and will keep throwing them into ideological meat grinder assaults for a long time to come.
I'm telling you this honestly, because I've traveled this road all the way to the end. But when I finally entered Russian territory, I couldn't help but cry. And the lawlessness that is currently happening throughout Europe, and so to speak, the so-called blooming garden in Protesto, often mentioned.
The adventures of the Z supporters in Europe aren't limited to Moldova. In Latvia, a whole zoo has accumulated. Vatniks stubbornly refuse to respect the country they live in and to learn even a few words in the official language.
Well, this is fascism, you understand? This is fascism. I'm picking up my order at Sensei, I paid for it, I'm a customer, paid for it. So what happens is, I tell this girl the numbers of my package in Russian, and she refuses to give me the package until I say the numbers in Latvian. And of course, in this moment you think, damn, why is it like this?
Latvian Vatniks are a whole separate species of fauna. They are willing to stubbornly hate the country they live in, even to their own detriment. A normal person simply cannot understand the refusal to learn Latvian. All over the world, people pay huge amounts of money to master additional languages. But these people refuse free courses and would rather choke than speak anything other than the language of Sasha, Bailey and Butyrka.
So, I get on the Riga Sigulda bus just now, and someone says to me, Latvian, right? Well, why should I have to buy tickets and speak Latvian? This person who's talking now will call the police. Well, let them call. We'll just wait for the police. I haven't broken any rules. I was ready to pay, even though I don't have to pay. Oh, that's it. Enough. Or just look at this weirdo. And he's standing there all straight. Latvia! Latvia! You see? The main thing is, he's bending over backwards for Latvia, while he's sitting in a complete mess himself.
On the road, while you're driving, you should really try to remain calm, and not so awful brag about how you have to speak their language, you get it?
The language problems of the Z supporters can only be explained by the incredibly overwhelming level of chauvinism and Nazism among so-called Russian citizens. They genuinely don't consider Latvians and other peoples to be human. They're convinced that everyone around them is of an inferior race, so everyone is obliged to know Russian. And Russians, as superior beings, don't even need to know how to speak. They can just grunt and occasionally screech.
Putin! Putin is president of the world! Hey!
Where better to live, Russia or Latvia?
I've tried living everywhere, in Latvia, in Russia, and in Europe. As of today, it's better in Russia.
Why in Russia? What do you think?
Compared to Latvia, it's freer, their freedom of choice.
What the hell are you even talking about?
Notice that Russians have language problems with all their neighboring countries. With Ukraine, the Baltic states, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, and Kazakhstan.
In Kazakhstan, a postal worker was fired for not knowing the Kazakh language. She should be able to understand and speak the language of the country in which she currently lives. Russian people who have found themselves living in any of the post-Soviet countries, and this is my deep and sincere conviction, do not owe anything to anyone at all.
So it's not about Ukraine or Latvia. Russians everywhere disregard the traditions of the countries they live in.
Are you speaking French right now? I'm asking because whether you're in Riga or in Paris, it really sounds like you're using the French language at this moment.
And do you know why they don't learn the languages? Because they dream of the day when the Russian army will come and occupy these countries, and then force everyone to speak Russian.
Latvia, Riga. I'm basically not a Nazi. I'm not a Nazi. In some sense, I justify Russia's attack on Ukraine. In some sense, she is right. I'm not a Nazi. Get together with Putin and then go out and kill all the Latvians. I'll personally hand you the bullets you need. Come here in tanks. By the way, we Russians are waiting for Putin to come in tanks and finally bring order here.
And the funniest thing is that all the Vatniks consider themselves anti-fascists, while at the same time calling for people to be killed based on their nationality. But when it comes to victory mania, they pull their pilotka caps down to their ankles.
Glory to Putin!
With the same sentiments, a march was held the day before in Cologne, Germany. Among its organizers is Elena Kolbasnikova. The local prosecutor's office accuses the woman of supporting the full-scale war in Ukraine.
These waiting people have spread all over Europe. In the 90s, they fled from the starving Soviet Union and gnawed their way through the Iron Curtain with their teeth. But as soon as they had enough to eat, cleaned themselves up, and bought jeans in a store instead of trading them from gypsies for a Yugoslavian dinner set, they immediately started thinking about greatness again. Suddenly, everyone became patriots of the Soviet Union.
I consider it my duty once again to call on the countries of Europe to take responsibility for preserving and passing on true historical memory from generation to generation.
They practically scold their legs with excitement at the mention of the Soviet Union. And they really like Putin, but only from a distance. It's much better to feel nostalgic for the prison of nations while looking out the window in Munich or on Brighton Beach, munching on a hot dog that they patriotically call a sausage in dough.
You are called, quite literally, the face of Putin's propaganda in Germany. How do you respond to that?
Well, to be honest, I want to say that I'm actually very glad about it, because we support our president, Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin.
But what about all this destruction? Did it make an impression on you?
It's terrible.
It's awful. Of course, there are military actions, destroyed houses.
But Russia bombs.
Not Russia.
In Mariupol?
There were military operations in Mariupol. Go ahead, speak.
Here, let's not confuse who bombed what.
We fled from Germany and we were banned from entering for the next 20 years.
Russia is a unique dump because it invests billions not in improving the lives of its own citizens, but in making life worse in other countries.
What the he?
Russian Vatniks have no goal, only the path. Following the Russian warship. Or, you know, suitcase, train station, Chukotka. How long the so-called civilized world will continue to tolerate these individuals is truly an intriguing and thought-provoking question. Perhaps, and maybe even very soon, the so-called Vatniks will all head en masse to their native harbor to fight over expired sausage and to steal butter.
I would like to remind you that this video is created for entertainment purposes and contains elements of satire and irony. All facts and events are presented in a hyperbolized or exaggerated form to convey a comedic or dramatic effect. Our goal is not to mislead, but to highlight humor. Please take it with a smile.